Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and welcome from littleBits. Thank you so much for joining us today to our webinar on leveling up your makerspace. We're very excited to be chatting with you all today, especially in the beginning of the year when you're all gearing up for the wonderful school year ahead. We have just a couple of housekeeping announcements while I understand you don't see my PowerPoint now, working on that. If you have any issues seeing or hearing anything, you can use the chat button. If you have questions for myself, and I am the manager of community programming here at littleBits and also a former New York City public school teacher, you can put that in the questions portion of your sidebar in the webinar platform. So chat is more for introducing yourselves to one another, introducing yourselves to us, and then questions, if you can put them in throughout the webinar as they come up, we'll have a live Q&A session at the end with Nicholas, and also I can answer questions related to littleBits as well. So we are going to start in just 1 minute. I want to encourage you all to use the chat to introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, where you're from, what level school, or what library you work in, where you're located, sort of anything interesting about or relevant about your experience with makerspaces. So feel free to use the chat to get to know one another and connect. So we'll use that. And then again, put your questions in when you're ready. So we'll get started. So welcome to today's webinar, Level Up Your Makerspace. I'm Naveen Murad, and I'm here from littleBits. I run our community programming as part of the education team, and I'm a former New York City middle school teacher as well. I taught humanities. And I'm really excited to now be with littleBits, working with a company with such a great mission. We have with us for the presentation today one of our lead educators, Nicholas Provenzano. Nick, you can go ahead and say hi.
Hello, everyone.
And Nick was kind enough to join us from Michigan. He is the Makerspace director at his school. He's basically a Makerspace king. He's written, books. We're going to get to his full bio in a moment, but we are so thankful to him, one of our littleBits lead educators, for presenting on leveling up your makerspace. So a little more about Nick. He is extremely accomplished as an educator. He's a technology coordinator and makerspace director at University Liggett School in Grosse Pointe Woods, Michigan. He's also an author, speaker, and consultant. He writes on his website, thenerdyteacher.com. So maybe some of you are familiar with The Nerdy Teacher from either his website or Twitter, on edutopia.org, and many other prominent educational websites. He's been featured on CNN.com, Education Week, the New York Times, and other media outlets. So he's basically a minor star or major star. In 2013, he was awarded the Technology Teacher of the Year by the MACUL and ISTE. I don't know, Nick, do they sound that out, or do they just say the letters?
McCall is usually what we call it, the Michigan Association of Computer Users and Learning.
Cool. So McCall and ISTE. Nicholas is a Google certified innovator, ASCD emerging leader, Raspberry Pi certified educator. I'm going to insert littleBits lead educator and a TED Ed innovative educator. His best-selling book, Your Starter Guide to Makerspaces, can be found on Amazon, and you can follow Nicholas on Twitter at The Nerdy Teacher. So again, really excited to have this educator makerspace expert on with us today. Just our agenda for today's webinar. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about littleBits, just give you a high-level overview of the tool. We'll pretty quickly get into the presentation by Nick, and then we will hopefully be fielding your questions that you're submitting into the questions section of the webinar at the end for live Q&A with Nick. So what is littleBits? If you're not familiar with littleBits, it's a platform, it's a modular platform of electronic building blocks, really, that snap together and allow inventors young and old to really imagine and design and invent anything. Bigger picture is we're, as a company, trying to reinvent the way kids learn so they can grow up to be tomorrow's change makers. These are the actual bits. So here's an example of how it works. They're color-coded and magnetic. So blue is power and pink is an input that will affect your output, which is green, and orange are wire or logic. Just like Lego, they snap together or snap apart. They're interchangeable. It's modular. To build a circuit, all you need, the most basic circuit, all you need is power and an output. So here we have a USB power and a bar graph. Plug those together, snap those together rather, you have light. Put something pink in between and you can now control your output. So in this case, the button will now control your light. And we like to talk about littleBits as having low floors, high ceilings, and wide walls. So low floors meaning they snap together, they're color-coded, it's a really simple system. Once you learn the basics of the color coding and how they snap together, you can combine them in an infinite number of ways. Really young children, young students, starting in early elementary school can really have success immediately inventing with littleBits. High ceilings, because although it is intuitive and simple to learn and easy to use, we have seen adults and professional designers use littleBits to make incredible inventions and incredible art installations. So although it presents low floors, so access to as many inventors as possible, once you start building with littleBits and inventing with littleBits, the sky's the limit. And wide walls being the way littleBits can be used across the curriculum in multiple subject areas, in formal school settings, out of school settings, informal school settings, at home. The contexts and that littleBits can be used in as a learning tool and invention tool are really broad, and so we say wide walls. I know myself when I was teaching humanities in New York City public schools, I would have loved to have been able to incorporate STEM and STEAM into my classroom. I don't think I would have known how. And so what I really love about littleBit, being an English teacher, and what I really love about littleBits is that now I know what I would have them do. We can talk more about that in the Q&A at the end. Because I want to get to our main attraction, the nerdy teacher. So this is Level Up Your Makerspace. Again, he's at the Nerdy Teacher if you want to follow or chat with Nick after this. I'm going to pass the controls over to Nick and he's going to get started, so just give us one moment. Okay, we're just switching over.
Hello. There we go.
Great. All right. So
hello, everyone.
It's all you, Nick. I'll be back at the end, everyone.
There we go. Thanks, Naveen. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out and watch this video, or if you're going to watch it later, taking the time to watch a recorded session. I'm Nicholas Provenzano, as Naveen introduced me as the nerd teacher. I've had really great opportunities to build makerspaces and work with districts and departments of education and the like to help build makerspaces and really bring this maker mentality idea to schools and districts and classrooms really around the country. And it's really great, and I'm excited to share with all of you what's going on. So the idea of leveling up your makerspace. So here's me, the nerd teacher. I've written a couple books based on my experiences. The newest one, The Maker Mentality, is out now, and it focuses more on that culture of making that is so important and crucial to have if you want a makerspace to be successful. So I like to just start with, possibly the broadest and simplest definition for making I could think of. That it's the creation of something new that was not there before. Even if you take something that already exists and change it a little bit, it's new, right? So this idea of making is an act of creation. And every time you create something, even if it's something that already exists, it's new because you've made it, you've brought it into existence. And for me, that's something really important because it opens up a whole world of possibility. Too many people like to tell you what is and what is not making. That's not making, that's just knitting, or that's not making, that's just putting glitter on paper. It's all making. It's all different types of making. It can be digital, it can be physical, it can be so many different things. So it's really important to understand that making is an inclusive act, and that everything that's created can be viewed as an act of making. So one of the things that's also important as you go on this journey is that making is about failing as much as it is about making. Little amazing art graphics that I put together there for you. I am sharing my experiences based on all of the failures I've had along the way. And for those of you out there looking to do this and explore makerspaces and making in your classroom, you have to be okay with making mistakes and not having the answers to everything, and really embracing that aspect of failing as part of the process, right? And there are plenty of euphemisms, first attempt in learning, acronym. There's lots of things out there to tell you how great failure is, and it is. It's just something that you just have to expect as part of the process of trying something new. The other thing that's really important for me out there is that we recognize that it is not about STEM, it is about STEAM. Make room for the A, the arts. I spent 15 years as a high school English teacher and worked in making and makerspaces into my content area. And it's a lot easier than you think. And it's really important for all the teachers out there that are hesitant to engage in makerspaces or making because they feel that it's a science thing or it's a math thing. It is, but it's also a history thing, and it's also an English thing, and it's also a language thing. It can be anything and everything. It's that, again, that idea of creation, of making something new, can fit into any curriculum area, and that's really, really important. So, right, the big question is, how do you level up your makerspace? It's that big idea of changing what you may already have and kicking it up a notch. So one of my favorite quotes, matter of fact, it's literally tattooed on my arm. If they give you ruled paper, write the other way. It's from Juan Ramon Jimenez. It's actually a epigraph for Fahrenheit 451, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And this is like my teaching philosophy, is that as teachers, we are given lots of ruled paper, whether it's standardized tests, whether it's the dimensions of our classroom and things like that. And it's up to us to find a way to write the other way, to take what we have and do it differently, to change it, to make it something that's unique to us. And that's something I'm really passionate about, and something I've always tried to pursue as an educator, as a writer, as a speaker, is that to do things differently, to really change the way that things are supposed to happen. And that's something I encourage everyone to do. So to do that, one of the things that you need to do is to find your team. It's important to understand that making, or makerspaces, or maker ed, as we call it, is not a solo project. It should never be solo. Teaching should never be solo. And as you expand and look at what makerspaces can be for you, it's important to assemble your team. And this team can be people right next door to you in the classroom. It could be across the hall. It could be the building down the street. It could be teachers from all over the country. And that's what's really important, is that you build the team that is important to you. And here's some like people that are really important to me. This is my friend Jenny and her awesome book, Courageous Adventures. She and I met, geez, a number of years ago now, and she is one of my favorite people in the world. Someone I can go to when I have crazy ideas or talk them through. And she's someone that is wonderfully supportive and is an amazing educator. So she's someone that is on my team that I can go to and say, hey, what do you think about this? What can we do about it? Another great person that I've been so lucky to even present with is Colleen Graves. She's an amazing author, librarian. She creates fabulous content for Makey now. And we've done a couple of crazy presentations together at ISTE. There we are chit-chatting back and forth in our Mad Maker Mad Scientist session, and that's my Gremlins lunchbox that I built and put a computer in. It's important to find those people, right, to surround yourself with that believe in you and believe in the ideas that you're exploring. Here is a crazy picture of a bunch of British and one American me educators at an event in England talking about digital making. And it looks like we're hitting people, but we're really fist pumping. It's really kind of crazy. It looks like I'm really angry in the back. But you have to find your crew, right? You have to be surrounded by people that believe in what you believe and want to change the culture of what education is. And so I have a list of people here on the side that are just amazing educators that are worth following and exploring and talking to. And all of them will chit chat with you and share tweets with you if you have questions. And that's what makes the maker community so great, is that it's filled with people that are so excited and happy to help anyone that's new to the area. And the hashtag Makerette is another wonderful hashtag to use. You can use it on Twitter, you can use it on Instagram. It's a wonderful tag to help organize a lot of the tweets that go around there. But these are some amazing people. It's definitely not an exhaustive list. I've got tons and tons and tons of great people that support me in other ways. But here's a good list for those of you looking to dive into making and gaining new ideas to expand what you already have in your space. Next thing you do is you need to get excited. You know, you don't have to get maybe this excited, but this is pretty excited. This is my excitement after getting my first LED to light up. I am very excited, as you can tell. It was a big moment for me. I'd never coded anything in my life, and I wrote 3 lines of code and the light was blinking, and I was as pumped as a person could be, as you can see. It's that excitement that you need to bring to changing your makerspace or creating a makerspace, is to bring that passion that has you excited. Because if you're not excited about doing it, it's going to feel like terrible work and a huge chore, and it's not going to really get accomplished. And then you're definitely not going to be able to get people to rally behind you and support what you're making. So as you look to level up your space, you know, one of the things about that is finding tools to support the space, right? There are a wide variety of tools, and the tools that I'm about to share with you are not all the tools. There are plenty of other tools out there that you can use and explore as part of your makerspace. One of my absolute favorites, and one that's probably used most often, is cardboard. You cannot go wrong with cardboard. Students are still building cardboard houses in middle school. It's a wonderful prototyping tool for kids just to test out dimensions and cutting and shapes and things like that. So if you're looking for ways to sort of start the making process in a very, very inexpensive way, cardboard is the way to go. Talk to your receiving office about cardboard boxes. Talk to local grocery stores or department stores if they've got boxes. You'd be surprised at how many boxes that they recycle or they just toss outside. And if you ask them to collect some and bring them to you, you can get some amazing cardboard boxes for kids to use in many, many different types of products. So I highly recommend you start collecting that cardboard. We just redesigned our makerspace and had lots of tables and chairs and things like that, and had so many boxes to store. We almost never have everything because they'll come in handy as kids start to explore and experiment and prototype. You want them to have a tool that's easy to use, but also very inexpensive, and you can get tons of cardboard for free with just a little bit of legwork. To go along with cardboard, this is an awesome tool that I just learned within a little over a year ago. I saw it at a conference, and it's called Make Do. And what Make Do is, it's screws for cardboard that are reusable, essentially. These little cardboard screws can be screwed in with the little plastic plastic screwdriver it comes with, and it'll connect pieces of cardboard. And what it does is that it saves on tons of duct tape, which is the tool of choice for my students, which is a great tool, but so much wasted duct tape. Well, the best thing about these Make Dos is that they're completely reusable. You can assemble something, use the screws, and then disassemble and take the screws and toss the cardboard, or use the cardboard in a different way. So if you're looking at prototyping, Make Do is a perfect combination with cardboard because they act as screws. So if you wanted to create a chest out of wood, but you wanted to test an experiment with cardboard, you can assemble all of the pieces and create using Make Do, and then take your measurements, see what you need to fix, and then take it apart and toss the cardboard or utilize it in a different way. So Make Do is a wonderful tool, and it's relatively inexpensive depending on the size of the kits that you buy. I bought the large, big toolkit set, and it's totally worth it. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on demco.com is another place. But you can find them really, really great sets that are definitely worth having in your makerspace if you're going to do a lot of cardboard work. I'm a Raspberry Pi certified educator, so I'd be remiss not to have Raspberry Pi in here. If you are looking at inexpensive ways to bring coding to your classroom, but a physical element to it, Raspberry Pi is the way to go. Raspberry Pi is a $35 computer board. You have to have your own mouse, keyboard, and HD monitor. So it's relatively inexpensive in the sense that the computer itself, it's cheap, but a lot of us have monitors in our computer lab or keyboards and mice in the basement somewhere in a box that are being tossed aside. You can find lots of great resources. I've had teachers tell me that they've gone to businesses and asked for their old monitors and keyboards and mice that they usually toss after a refresh in their office. That's another thing you can consider for them to get donations of screens if you need that. It's a wonderful tool that's got a built-in Minecraft. It's got something called Sonic Pi, which is music that you can alter through coding. It's got Python scripts, which is I learned how to code, and it's what really had me moving forward. Raspberry Pis can be used in just so many different projects. You can add a camera module, and you can make a photo booth like I've made. You can make a GIF camera. You can make motion detector video camera. You can do an alarm system. There's so many different things, and you really have to go and check out raspberrypi.org, which has tons of resources for getting started with Pi, doing coding with Pi, working with students with Pi. There's tons and tons and tons of great resources that go along with it. They've got their own magazine. It's called the Magpie. That's absolutely worth checking out. It's the official Raspberry Pi magazine, comes out every month. Check your community. You might have something called Raspberry Jams, which is gatherings of people that love Raspberry Pi and show off projects that they've made. Coder Dojo is run through Raspberry Pi, and it is a group of people that get together and do coding as a club. It's just filled with great possibilities. So if you're looking to bring a digital upgrade to your makerspace, Raspberry Pi is a great place to start for that process. As I mentioned before, duct tape. You can never have too much duct tape. I buy it bulk as much as I can in a variety of colors because you can do so many different things with duct tape. Kids making dresses, kids making purses, just as a good tool when you're crafting and building and doing other things. You gotta have duct tape if you're gonna have cardboard, if you're gonna have crafting in general. You gotta have duct tape as a part of your space. I got close to running out last year, and it was a terrifying experience as kids were freaking out as to what they were gonna do. Luckily, Amazon shipped and got to me the next day, so I had plenty of duct tape for all the kids' projects that were ahead of them. But it's a really important aspect to a makerspace is to have duct tape. It works really, really well. Makeys. Wow. When I learned about Makeys, I was really confused because I didn't understand what it really did. And then I looked at the Makey board and I was like, it looks like a Nintendo controller. Like I wasn't quite sure what it did. But once I took a moment to really explore it, Makey can do whatever you want it to do. And when you combine it with something like Scratch, you can create these amazing programs and amazing games and amazing everything. I think a lot of people have seen playing the piano using bananas in a Makey. It's really kind of trippy. But it works on connectivity and the alligator clip. So it's really accessible for young kids to explore Makey, but also as an adult, you can create amazing things. A great person to check out is Colleen Graves and the work that she's done with Makey. She just designed an exit ticket system with Makey, where kids hit a wall on their way out to let the teacher know how well they understood what they were doing today. And the Makey recognizes the contact and puts the information for a teacher to look at later. It's super brilliant. She's challenged people to make their own version of it, and it's something that I really want to do and try out that I'm excited about. But Makey can be really anything you want to do, and it works on basic Scratch. You can do other programs, but it's connectivity, so you can use copper strips, tinfoil, things of that nature to really design and create whatever you want. I have a student that's really excited about making their own operation game, which is actually really neat. So there's lots of possibilities with Makey, and it's inexpensive enough to buy a few for your classroom, your Makerspace, to really allow kids to explore what that might look like. Yarn. Oh, yarn. You can do so many different things with yarn. You can braid yarn, make bracelets. You can make tons of crazy colored hair for your puppets that you're making. It's one of those staples in a makerspace that, again, gets overlooked because people are thinking laser cutter, 3D printer only, when things like yarn, duct tape, cardboard can really make any student see the possibilities of what they're thinking. And so when you look at your makerspace, don't think you have to have all of the fanciest equipment, all the most expensive equipment, because I found that students new to a makerspace gravitate more towards the traditional tools, the 1.0 tools as opposed to the 2.0 tools, because they're familiar with it, they're comfortable with it, and it's the start of that building process. Now, while I said you don't have to have a 3D printer, it's not terrible to have one. 3D printers are great, and it all depends on what it is you're doing and designing and making and building. For my students, it's really helped them see the design process as they went from an idea to design to prototyping to printing out. It's a wonderful aspect for that. Kids in social studies can create monuments, they can design their own. We had a social studies teacher where the students recreated a Byzantine Empire city, and they all had to design different types of building that they researched and then print them, and then they did a scale model of this entire city. It was insane, and it was a social studies class, and the kids were totally on board. I have a picture of the Dremel 3D printers here. It's ones that we have that I'm an advocate for because they just don't break. They do not jam. They're very simple to use, and they're cost affordable in my opinion at $1,500 for the education packet, which I know it sounds expensive, but compared to other high quality 3D printers that have various issues, this is a really strong price point for the size of the printing bed. If you're really looking to level up your makerspace, we have 3, thanks to a wonderful grant from a local education group. These are the type of things that I look for, Dremel tools for a makerspace, because Dremel just has a history of solid tools and amazing customer service if you need it. So that's where my big recommendation is. Go back low-tech Play-Doh. Oh, Play-Doh. Just you open up a little container of Play-Doh and the smell like instantly takes you back to like being a child. I'm due to refresh my Play-Doh. You should probably refresh your Play-Doh every few years because colors get mixed up and things get gross and things don't close all the way, and so things dry out and become like bricks. So it's important to refresh your Play-Doh supplies every few years. People tell me you can make your own Play-Doh, and that can be a maker project, and then you store it, and then you have your own Play-Doh to make over and over and play with. I'm down with that if people are down with that. it's still just a very classic modeling prototyping tool that any age can use to just sort of flesh out some ideas that they have in their head and to see where it takes them. littleBits, of course, I've been a huge fan for a number of years and used them in my classes. When you're exploring electronics, one of the things that can be very difficult is soldering and little kids and burning their fingertips. So you want to avoid that whenever possible. And so littleBits is a great tool to do that because they snap together with magnets, and you can't snap them together wrong because the magnets won't connect, which means you can't short anything out. They're easy to clean up, and they're color coded about what each thing does. I just put out one kit, and the kids just play and they build and they get ideas out. And we've used them in science classes where kids are thinking about electricity and exploring current. And it's a really great tool to have in a space when you're looking at kids just to sort of tinker and build. So it's one thing to have all of these tools and all of these amazing ideas, but if you don't have the bigger idea over it, this thing I call the maker mentality that sort of supports the concept of making, a makerspace will not thrive. It will just be a space that is used occasionally and will gather dust, which is unfortunate. But this maker mentality is really key because it's what a person can create and demonstrate understanding through making. And that's what we really want our students. Makerspaces and the idea of making in general is a way to move away from standardized testing. It's a way to go beyond the poster board, right? So having a makerspace, whether it is a physical space in a library and another part of the building or a corner of your classroom, we want to have kids to be able to think, oh, I can do that, or I can use these tools to demonstrate that I understand X. And it's that empowerment that you want to give to students for them to demonstrate their understanding and to support them through their making journey to make that happen. So for me, there are like different aspects of what it means to be a maker and to make this maker mentality happen. And it's about being an artist, being a hacker, a storyteller, inclusive, passionate, being a dreamer, being fearless, and of course, being true to who you are. If you want to take your makerspace up to the next level, you need this culture of making to surround it. Because again, it'll just be a room filled with stuff. And we've got plenty of that in schools all over the country, all over the world. We need a room that not only has stuff, but also has that mentality around it that get the most out of using those tools to support student learning. And one of the ways to do that is through project-based learning. So when you look at maker spaces or making, I always get the question, it's like, okay, well, I have a space, well, how do I use it? And it's such a weird question because it's almost like I'm being asked, well, what lesson do I teach? What lesson do I do? And it's not about creating just a specific lesson that utilizes the space. You really have to take a step back and just sort of view your overall teaching method. What's your methodology? For me, as an English teacher, as I moved away from standardized testing, I moved into project-based learning, which for me led to the natural progression of makerspaces, because as I wanted my kids to have access to different tools to expand what they're able to create for their projects, having a makerspace with various tools to support that was key. It was absolutely important. So as I started to explore project-based learning, I started to see how instrumental a makerspace can be to make that happen. Here's an example from a photo from last year. I was working in the space, and all of a sudden I looked up and I saw all of these different girls working on various maker projects. And I like to call this one "Who Run the World." It's like one of my absolute favorite photos from last year. These are a wonderful example of girls with this maker mentality idea. They're in this space creating because they want to, not because they've been assigned work to do, not because it's been required by teachers for a different reason. These were kids that came to the space and said, I want to explore 3D printing. I want to explore coding. I want to explore making music. This was such a powerful moment for me because I wanted to create an environment where kids felt comfortable to do that. And in the middle of working last year, I looked up and I saw this great moment where all of these kids were working. It was a great picture of a rocket the kid had designed. They use water and air pressure. It's part of a science lesson. And he came to me and said, I want to 3D print the fins for my rocket because I think it'll actually go further. was like, okay. He did all this extra research on his own and did this design, and then he launched it. And then he came back and he goes, oh, I think it's my nose cone. I should have 3D printed my nose cone. So he went back through the design process. So he iterated and said, this is what I need to make, and it needs to be more aerodynamic, and I can't have all these bumps with the tape. He did all of this extra research on his own that was well beyond what was needed for the project. So as a makerspace and as the teacher, the science teacher that runs this classroom, Mr. Bandos does an amazing job really creating this culture that supports student making in that exploration and going that extra mile to create something that's meaningful. And then sometimes it's just crafting and building cardboard robots, getting down on your knees, playing with cardboard, getting your hands dirty, and just having a whole bunch of fun. It is taking up bits of duct tape and tying packaged air pockets together and seeing what you can create. It's putting a little bow tie on your monster robot that you've built and just sharing it with everyone. Making can be anything and anyone at any point, and it's about creating that mentality to support it across the board. And it's creating a littleBits droid elf to help deliver presents on the holidays, or it is creating amazing photography assignments. This is a truly breathtaking set of photos created by a student, Nicole. I asked her permission, and she said yes, I could use it for a presentation, where their assignment was to demonstrate their understanding of Gothic elements found in literature, and she chose to do a photography session with her sister. And these are just some of the photos that she created. And they are truly amazing photos. And I couldn't be more excited and proud of what she was able to create and what she was able to do with these type of pictures, because she takes this idea of what a maker mentality is, and she really invested in it. She really took it and ran with it. And that's something that's really exciting, because she easily could have just written an essay and did a poster board and just did a presentation on what it looks like for these literary elements. But if you think about what it took to stage these photos, to create the atmosphere for these photos, it's really intense. And to think about how long it took to create these and to convince her sister to do all this makeup, and it really, for me as a teacher, shows how a student demonstrated understanding of these items in a way that a multiple choice test could never truly tell me. And that's what's so powerful about a makerspace, is that it allows those students to demonstrate understanding in ways that are meaningful to them. And this is something that Nicole will remember. I mean, she can look at these photos in 20 years and go, oh, that's the Gothic element photos. Like, I remember those. And then she'll have all of these memories of this time she spent on this project and how important and meaningful it was to them. And creating a makerspace allows kids access to those tools to do those types of projects, which is why it's so important to have that extra space, that extra time, and really that mentality to allow kids to do that type of exploration, so you can see in what kids are capable of when they are given time. This photo is about as chilling as I can think for a sophomore in high school to create, and I think it's so powerful when we think about it. And when you look at maker spaces, there's that aspect of meaningful making where you want it to be more than just fidget spinners. I know there's always that fear that kids just want to make fidget spinners, and I always say, let them make a fidget spinner. Then after that, tell them they need to start thinking about design in different ways and how they can improve upon it or change it or make the next type of fidget spinner. But there's also this aspect of meaningful making. And there's this really, really great program. It's called Enable, enablingthefuture.org, that sends you the files to 3D print pieces of prosthetics. And they send you the wiring and the directions and everything like that. And kids in classrooms can actually build prosthetics for kids. And then once you have built it, they get sent back to the company, and then they go to little kids who need prosthetics. Now, for me, this is such a powerful way to make learning so important to our students. Whether this is part of a science class or just part of a maker project in general, to have access to a 3D printer and to create something that can enhance, support a young person's life is really amazing. The research that I did and the kids have done into this about how expensive prosthetics are for young kids because they're growing, and to replace them over and over and over again is an expense that many families can't afford. And so this organization with 3D printing and having schools all over the country 3D print these pieces and send them off to these students in need is amazing. And it's hard not to get choked up every time I see this and I think about it, and the fact that our kids been able to create things and help little kids out. And, one girl said to me, Mr. P, we're creating something so that this little boy or little girl can like hold hands with her mom and dad for like the first time. And like, it just got me choked up. The things you take for granted, holding your son or daughter's hand, and, someone not able to do that, but then to be able to create something and have the kids print it and build it and then share it is this really powerful way to take making and make it relevant, right? To make it meaningful to them beyond just, like I said, fidget spinners or things like that. So for me, I look at this as such an important aspect of making, and I encourage you to explore it. I'll go back a little bit again so people can see the website. They can take a screenshot of everyone or write it down really quick, enablingthefuture.org. It's such a powerful group, and there are other similar ones like it as well if you want to do some exploring, but this is the one that I've used, and other schools that I've talked to and worked with have used in the past as well. So it's definitely worth exploring if you really want to take making and try to make it something a little more meaningful. So, the big question for you at this point is, now what? What do I have to do? What are the expectations? You've just given me all these tools and all these ideas, and where do I go? And the one thing I always tell people is that it is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, no one is asking you to reinvent everything you've ever done in your entire educational career in the next week. Take some of the things that I've shared here, or things you've found online, and take like one and explore it, implement it. Maybe it's you need to focus on project-based learning before you're diving full 100% into Makerspace. That's okay. Find a lesson, see how you might integrate project-based learning. And then from there, maybe that next step is to say, oh, okay, how do I utilize our Makerspace, or how do I create a space in my room that helps support the project-based learning that I want to do in my classroom? Too often people leave sessions or leave conferences excited but overwhelmed because they don't know where to start. And sometimes when you don't know where to start, you don't start at all. We definitely don't want to see that. We want to see a start. And so one teacher I worked with for just a number of years, every start of the school year, the first week where teachers were reporting, this teacher came to me and she said, okay, Nick, what's the one tool I need this year? And I would always say, well, what do you need? And then we can talk about that tool. And we would have a talk, and I would find a tool that would help her. She's like, okay, here's my one tool. This is what I'll be working on this year. And as she would work with that tool, if it was great and helpful, she kept it. And then the next year, she had another tool. If it didn't work, she tossed it, and then she was back again. It was just that idea for her is that every year I'm going to try something new and implement it. If it works, I keep it. If not, I toss it and I start back all over again. For you out there, I suggest the same thing. Add what you feel comfortable adding. From there, add, explore, adapt, like we all do as teachers, and find out what works for you, whether it's adding more project-based learning, whether it's shifting an essay to a project, whether it's shifting a test to a project once every marking period. Take your time. You have the time to do it. There's nothing worse than rushing, being overwhelmed, and then not doing something fully, and that can definitely impact the engagement of students and really the support of administration or other team members in your school. So one of the things I want to sort of wrap up to do before we get to any questions that people might have out there is that you need to feel comfortable reaching out to people for questions. The internet can be a crazy place, but it's also filled with amazing makers and educators willing to reach out and help and support. There are tons of great books out there. Colleen Graves, Dia Redita have written amazing books that are worth checking out. I've written a couple of books that aren't terrible. So if you're looking for some not quite totally terrible books, your starter guide to makerspaces is great if you're just looking to explore building a space from scratch or adapting yours. And the maker mentality is all about that culture of making for classrooms, schools, and districts that helps support the makerspace that you've built. So both of those are available. I'm also always available to send a message to you on Twitter. My email is below as well there. If you want to connect and ask questions about our makerspace, I'm the director of a middle school and upper school makerspace out here in Michigan. It's something I'm really passionate about, something I've been very lucky to have a supportive staff, administrators to make this happen. So if you have any questions for me, do not hesitate to reach out. And of course, we'll ask some answer some questions here. And I'll turn this screen back over to Naveen.
Thanks, Nick. That was awesome, as always. I am going to just give us a moment while we switch over. I'm going to be moderating the questions. We've had some really interesting ones come into the questions section of the platform. Thank you for those of you who let us know the chat wasn't working and automatically, as educators do, did the workaround and just started writing in the questions space. So I've collected some from throughout the webinar, but please feel free to add them, add your questions, keep them coming in, and I will present as many as we can to Nicholas in the next 10 to 12 minutes. So here's a really good one. Sorry, I'm gonna just copy and paste this last one. Share the screen with you and we'll get started. Okay, great. Oh, sorry, we'll take a little bit of technical difficulty with the screen sharing. Thank you all for your patience. This is going to, be resolved right now, I hope. Okay, great. So Nick, the first question that came in from our audience I wanted to ask you was, how do you address equity in terms of access, in terms of tools, in the makerspace?
Great question. One of the things that I've been very happy about in terms of equity for the makerspace is that it allows all students access to the same tools. And that's really important to me because some kids have different tools available at home and other kids just have access to sometimes not even markers or pens or anything. So a makerspace for me is important that it is open every day before school, during lunch and after school, and then during the day for all classes, obviously, that it is accessible all the time, much like a library, so that all kids have access to the space and can get the most out of it. And it's been really nice in the conversation I've had with kids who have said things just, as simple as, I'm so happy I could use this because I don't have any of this stuff at home. And it was yarn, it was Play-Doh, it was Legos, which is another great tool. I should have had that on the list. Legos, gotta have Legos for your makerspace. Great prototyping tool, great building tool, wonderful to have. But a makerspace can be really great at creating equity for students because it has tools that kids can use, and I don't charge kids anything, right? I mean, it's like a library in that sense. Kids can come in and use all the tools and the perishables, and we replenish as needed. So if I ran out of duct tape, I buy more duct tape. If I run out of Play-Doh, I buy more Play-Doh. So it's never an issue where any kid needs to come in here and fear that they can't afford to use any of the stuff in here, because every kid can design and 3D print and laser cut, and we will provide the materials for them. And that's a thing, fun budget stuff that you have to work with grants and things of that nature. But to make sure that it's equitable for all students, I want every kid to be able to come in and use whatever tools that we have.
Great, thanks, Nick. The next question is on making more in general, and this we've gotten several thank yous in the chat, let's call it, to you for this wonderful webinar. But one question was particularly at getting young girls interested in making, and the question was, how do we get more young girls interested in making? Is this into our maker spaces and pursuing the STEM and STEAM fields? Is this something you've thought about? Is this something you work to address?
Yeah, it was one of my secret goals, was to have a lot of girl involvement in the makerspace. And by secret, I just meant I wasn't going to advertise it like, come girls, use the makerspace. I was just going to try to do subtle things, because I've been doing a lot of reading about this, because I think it's well known that we have, we do not have enough women in STEM or STEAM fields, and there's a reason for that. And recently I've been reading that just having women only or girl only programs is actually not helping the issue in regards to numbers. Girls need to feel comfortable going into STEM, STEAM places where the guys are, the boys are, because they want to do it. And so for me, I had that picture up, the Who Run the World picture. That's about creating an environment. And I created an environment where girls could come in, work, and not worry about anything. And the guys can come in and work and not worry anything. And I have strict sort of guidelines about how people interact with one another, and our school in general does. So the makerspace really isn't any different from that. It's about community. And to get more girls involved, it's about giving girls the opportunity to create like anything else. Boys are given the same opportunity and giving them this environment, right? A girl's not getting into STEM because she just doesn't like STEM. That could be one reason. If girls aren't getting involved because they think it's for boys, that's a cultural issue. I mean, that's something that needs to be addressed on a larger scale than just a makerspace. And, sort of what I touch on in my second book, The Maker Mentality, it's a huge culture that needs to shift in regards to inclusiveness of, hey, everyone and anyone can do this. And it's about seeing girls in a makerspace. It's about seeing boys working with girls in makerspaces. It's okay to have programs that encourage girls to be involved, but to have girls only programs, the research is starting to show that that's not helping the numbers in a way that you'd hope. It's about encouraging girls to just be involved in the program that is gender neutral. Come and do coding. It's a cool thing to do, and here's some things that you can do, and give them those opportunities. So I think every school is different and every culture is different, and so the approach needs to be personalized. And I think I found success in going to students, boys and girls, saying, hey, I really think you'd like doing this. Why don't you come down to the space, check this out? And sometimes those personal interactions have been really successful as well. But again, it's gender neutral. I don't go out of my way to encourage more girls than boys. It's anyone that seems to have the inclination and the skill to create or make something kind of neat. But like I said, every space is different, but I really, really think it's about creating the culture, not just in your makerspace, but your entire school, that supports girls going into whatever field that they want, and supporting boys going in whatever field they want.
Great, thanks so much, Nick. And if any of you happen to be attending Maker Faire, Global Maker Faire in New York City, out in Queens this weekend, I'll be there. littleBits will be there, and we on Saturday at 1:30 p.m. will actually be having a panel with some of our educators and even a student about how and why we can get more girls into STEM and STEAM. So if you happen to be in New York, please stop by. You can look us up on the agenda. Nick, I think this will have to be our last question for today, but there's been a couple of different questions around assessment in the makerspace when it's in a school, assessment in the makerspace classroom. Is this something that has been a challenge, presented a challenge for you, and what have been sort of your solutions? How do you assess learning in the makerspace in school?
The assessment question always drives me nuts because it's depending on what's being discussed. It's sometimes the wrong question. I look at a makerspace as a space for kids to create, to demonstrate understanding of a concept for a class, right? So as a makerspace, I'm not assessing understanding. It's not a rubric that I go and I check mark that they've done all those things. That is not making. Trying to assess the act of making is completely the wrong approach. Now, the other side of it is, are the kids are being assessed for their project, for their class. That's a different thing. And that's a curricular issue that, I did in my English classes where I had a rubric that said, did so-and-so demonstrate understanding of A, B, C, D, and then I had like the 4 rows across. They demonstrated it wonderfully and pretty good, and then okay, and then not at all, like whatever rubric looked at. But that was assessing their understanding. It wasn't assessing the act of making. It wasn't assessing the use of the makerspace. Now you could argue that, well, they didn't seem to understand because they didn't create something that fully demonstrated what they knew. But even then, they might have created something with what they understood, but they still didn't understand the concept. So the making isn't being assessed. It is their understanding that's being assessed. So when you move to project-based learning, as a teacher, your rubrics are going to be different. And that's okay. And that's a good thing. And eventually, you'll hopefully have kids creating rubrics, which I did. I had kids created, this is how I'm going to be assessed to demonstrate these concepts. And this is what I'm creating to do that. But a specific way to assess what they know. Now, I think there's a way to recognize skills kids earn. And a badging system is very popular in a lot of places. We're starting to get badging off the ground here. It's an interesting system that takes a lot of tweaking. But again, that's more about acknowledging skills earned than it is about assessing what they know. It sounds semantics a little bit there, but assessment just I don't like the view of it, the term of it when it comes to makerspaces, because it just seems negative. It just seems like, well, I'm going to see if you really know how to use a glue gun. Well, okay, that seems like a really weird thing to assess. If they use the glue gun in a way that makes their project work and that's what they're cool with, cool. Like that's how they're going to do it. Using a soldering gun, I'm not the best person in the entire world. My little beads of lead aren't perfect little Hershey kisses, but it gets the job done. So I want to caution people about the idea of assessing the act of making, and again, focusing on assessing what the kids are, what they understand, and how they choose to demonstrate that is one thing, but what they do understand is really what you're assessing for a grade in a classroom. So I don't assess making here, but I do recognize skills through badges for kids that have demonstrated skills earned through 3D printing, laser cutting, etc.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. It's really been such a great presentation and discussion. And we really value your thoughts from the inside of the makerspace and the school itself. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, ideas, best practices, suggestions today. There have been so many more questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But if you still would like to pose your question to Nick, feel free to reach out to him. You have his Twitter and email on the screen. He's at The Nerdy Teacher. You can also write into littleBits. You can feel free to email education@littlebits.com and reference this webinar, and we'll get your question fielded. So thank you again so much, Nick. I'm going to let you say goodbye, and then I'm just going to, for everyone else that's on the line, I'm going to spend just a few more minutes talking about littleBits, and we'll wrap up in about 3 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a great time. Naveen, thank you for hosting this. A great opportunity to share with anyone. And again, don't hesitate to email me or shoot me a tweet if you have any further questions. And you can always go to Amazon and pick up both my books if you want to dive a little bit deeper. So please go explore, ask questions, and thank you guys for your time. Have a great night, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Awesome. So I hope that was really valuable for all of you. I wanted to start actually, sorry for the back and forth here. I was debating because we're a little late, but I will start with this video. At littleBits, we like to talk about something called the moment. Instead of explaining to you what the moment is, I'd like to show it to you. So we're going to see this in just a second. Great. So as you hopefully all saw successfully, the moment is so many different things when we're talking about invention and when we're talking about making. So the moment can be that first snap with littleBits. The moment can be the first time your invention works. The moment can be the first time your invention fails and you have to try again. Sorry, I understand my screen is paused. I'm going to try to get this back on for you. But the moment really is that moment where you feel proud or motivated or changed, inspired in some way by your making, by your invention. Okay, great. So I just wanted to show you, for those of you who work in the school and are interested particularly in littleBits, which can be a wonderful addition and tool in your makerspace, we have certain kits that are designed for the school and the classroom setting. So that is our code kit and our STEAM student set. They both come with full curriculum, including student-facing materials and teacher-facing materials, lesson plans, and a lot of guidance to use it in the classroom for project-based learning, for invention-based learning. The code kit adds the element of introducing the basics of block coding to inventing and engineering with littleBits, and the STEAM student set is completely offline and focuses on the design cycle and the invention cycle. Both kits align with many national standards, including Next Generation Science Standards and Common Core Learning Standards. We have, for those of you who have a larger makerspace, or maybe you get that grant you've been hoping you'd get to get materials for your makerspace, we have a pro library and a workshop set. These are great for larger implementations, for truly dedicated makerspaces. And what's wonderful about littleBits, again, is that you can always add to it. So even if you start with kits, you buy another kit, they're going to be compatible, you're going to be able to mix and match, and eventually you'll have a library of bits, like the Pro library. If you just want to try out littleBits and you haven't started or haven't used them yet and are just trying to get your hands wet, see what this is all about, and don't want to sort of invest in a larger purchase at the time, we just came out with really great inventor kits that we, 3 different types that we just launched. So there's an electronic music inventor kit. These are sort of based on like some of the things that our community members have really loved and we've seen them invent. So the electronic music inventor kit allows you to create an electronic guitar of sorts. The space rover inventor kit has you create a really cool space rover that can do tons of things. And then the base inventor kit is really great for as a like introduction to littleBits kit, introduction to inventing with littleBits. I did thank Nick. I will thank him again. He is one of our lead educators and is really an expert on making, especially within the K-12 setting. So feel free to reach out to him. Feel free to reach out to littleBits Education as well with your questions. And we are at education@littlebits.com. You can also visit our website at littlebits.com/education. So that's it. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today, taking the time out of your really busy days to join us. And if you're listening to this as a recording, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to it. If you want your question answered again, please write into us, education@littlebits.com, or write directly to Nicholas. Thank you all. Have a great one.